My name is Petrus Apollis. I was born in Cape Town, District 6. I grew up there, attended the Moravian Mission School, and matriculated at Vredendal High School in 1949, and went to Youth Training College and qualified as a teacher. At that time, the college was in Rowland Street, before it shifted to Athlone. But a number of years after that, I went back to the college and took a special course in doing handwork, specialized in that area. I traveled quite a lot. First, I was a teacher in Cape Town itself, and I taught at Simonstown. Then I decided that it is tough to get a permanent post in Cape Town itself, because jobs for pals, but I was not a very good pal. So I packed up and moved away. My first post outside of the peninsula was in Beaufort West. I taught at the high school there, and then I went to Calvinia and I taught at the high school there. From there I went to Vredendal, where I taught there, and then I went to Youth College for a third year. And while I was busy studying, I was approached by the principal of Claver Primary School. He offered me a better position, and a better position meant more money. So I decided, okay, I'll take the job. And then I came and started here in Claver. That was around about 1967. From that time onwards, I started here, and I stayed here and taught at the school here, primary school here.
So, Mr. Apollis, sorry to interrupt. Tell us about Claver of 1967. As someone who, as you sketch your history, born in Cape Town, bred in Cape Town, grew up there, became educated there, moved around a lot, but explain Claver of 1967 to us.
Well, I got a job as a teacher at Neoth Primary School. The thing is this, that I was offered a better position than the one I had in Vredendal. Better position, more money. That's the motivation. So I took it that actually my family stayed here, and we had a temporary home in Vredendal. I stayed there during the week from Monday to Friday, and then me and my wife, she did nursing at the TB hospital there, and over the weekend we used to come to Claver home. The children were here, and it was quite a funny experience in this aspect that Claver was divided into camps. And the camps were based on churches. So we had an Anglican camp where the Anglicans stayed, and we had a Roman camp where all the people belonging to the Roman Catholic church stayed. We had an Apostolic camp where the people belonging to the Apostolic Faith Mission, they stayed. And we had an Ingi camp where people belonging to the VGK, they stayed. And in most of these camps, it was centered around the church. So the first thing was just the people got together and tried to raise money to get a place of worship. And we had a little small church. It was called the church with the dung floor, what in Afrikaans we call a misvloer. Because on a Friday, the women used to carry out all the benches out of the church. They went to collect cow dung, and they smeared the floor, So that on a Sunday it was nice and clean and smelled very nice. It lasted for a number of years until they decided that it was best to give it a cement floor, and it was not necessary to get all the trouble collecting the dung and smearing and carrying on the things and waiting until the floor was dry and carrying it back. So that is what happened. After that, the church decided to build a hall, the first hall in our community. And there we used it to raise funds. First of all, we were the first, or not actually the only, but among the community, the first bioscope at that time. Friday nights we had bioscope shows, and everybody used to come, and it was quite a nice thing. I was one of the operators who operated the projector to show the people how it's done, taught some of the other chaps how to do, or how to operate the machine, because it was actually a sort of thing. When you got training in Cape Town at the colleges, you are also taught how to work with different kinds of educational things. And one of that was actually how to operate a 16mm projector. So it was not something new to me, and I was adapted to do that sort of thing. And so I started here. The funniest thing is this: I was a Moravian. There was no Moravian church here. So I had a choice. Which church must I join? Because what was important was you have to belong to a church in order to get a place to live. They only allowed members in the different camps belonging to that church. So I actually married a lady from the Anglican church, and so we got a place to stay in the Anglican camp. And then I changed my membership of the Moravian church to that of the Anglican church. The nearest Moravian church was at Vredendal, and it was a problem getting there, because only much later they had established a church in Clan William, which was a bit nearer, but then it was too late. I've already joined the church, became a lay minister, and then I decided to actually get to what actually was the future of most of the colored people did in the time when I lived. When we matriculated in 49, we had a choice. Either you become a teacher or you become a minister, a religious minister. Those were the choices we had. And I decided I don't want to be any one of the two. And then I went job hunting, and I worked for a firm, qualified as in a funny trade, cutting windows out of glass. And I worked for a number of years in that trade, and then I decided to become a teacher. So the important thing was actually this. At the beginning, when I was at high school, I decided I don't want to be a teacher. I don't want to be a minister, in the religion, because there should, or actually must be, something else for a person to do after qualifying. I applied for quite a number of jobs, and in most cases my color was against me. You come up, go for an interview, and you find out that you are the only black person amongst the other applicants. Your chances of getting a job was very slim. Once I went for a job application, I was the only person. I was offered a job as a sewing machine mechanic, and I had to serve an apprenticeship. And I actually I got a job. And at the interview later on, the manager of the business told me they were satisfied because one of my matric subjects was metalwork. I did metalworking and I could work with machines and with metals and tools and things like that, because it was one of the subjects offered as a matric subject at Trafalgar High School at that time. He said, I got a qualification, I can do the job. He spoke to the mechanic at the work, and the chap said, if I get a job, he's going to resign. He was not prepared to share his knowledge with somebody that is not white. So I didn't get a job. And with that as a background, I found that it was pretty difficult during that time to get work that you really wanted to do. I also got mixed up with different protest organizations, where I was part of the Torch March with Sailor Malan, and got an offer to join the Communist Party, and was chased around by the police at that time. But the turning point came in when the Nationalists won the election. We were in Cape Town, in Long Street, at the building of the Cape Argus, and they were posting up all the results as they came through during the as the election progressed. And then we saw periodically that the Nationalist Party was gaining, and they were going to win. So my friend who was with me said, look here, the best thing for us to do is go home. Somebody's going to get hurt. So we went home, and the next day we found out that all the black people who were there, when the final results came out, were beaten up. The whites turned against them, chased them around and tell them, now we are the bosses and we're going to do what we have to do. The same thing happened at the Torch parade organized by Sailor Malan. We all marched with our torches to the Grand Parade. We passed Butukan Street next to Kellington Square, and we saw hundreds of white policemen standing there. And later on, of course, we were beaten up, attacked, and we had to run for our lives. Because one of the men who worked with me, he unfortunately was visiting somebody. He stayed in the Buka, so we had to go through the central part of Cape Town. And he was not part of whatever happened. And unfortunately, the police got hold of him, and they gave him a good beating with a shambox. And the next day at work, he was all covered with purple and wool marks and things like that. And he wanted to know what actually happened. So we told him, well, there was this protest march, and this happened, and he was quite astonished. He didn't know about the march. Unfortunately, he was in the wrong place at the right time. Then coming back to becoming a priest. At that time, I was working, teaching, and I was approached, and I went for an interview at Bishop's Court. They accepted me, but I was not prepared to go to the training college, which was in Grahamstown. I was not prepared to leave my family and go there for the 3 years that was required. So I had to do sort of in training. That is, they asked you to go to say Cape Town, attend a course there. I know once I went to Graafrenet and I attended a course there. And so we used to go from one place to the other. The church used to send you there and you attend these courses. And then they decided that I can become a priest if I must go to Grahamstown, and I refused. I did not think that with all the training I had, that why should I go and attend go to a seminary and do the same things that I've done all these years. And then we had a synod. And at the synod, there was a proposal which said that we will make people priests on one condition, that the rector, that is the chief priest of the parish, must decide. Does he want somebody to be an assistant and be a priest under him? Yes or no? The decision was with him. Then I got up in the synod and I said, it is not possible to be a priest for, say, a period of 2 or 3 years. And then the rector decides, no, he doesn't want an assistant. Then you're not a priest anymore. What will be the effect with the congregation? What will be the effect with the people of the community? What will be the effect with the other churches? At a certain time, they call you father. And all of a sudden, you're not a father anymore, what you call you now. And we had quite an argument, and my argument won. It was decided that once you're ordained as a priest, you're always a priest. And it does not rest with the decision of another person to decide if you will be a priest or not. That's how I became a priest. That was about 25 years ago. I've been serving the community in Klaver. I not only served the community of Klaver, I moved about. The diocese posted me. I was served at the time at Springbok. During the school holidays, they used to shush you around. I worked in Clanwilliam, and most of the churches in this area, I served as a priest. But it could only be done during school holidays, or especially on a Sunday. But then the place must be very near, so that I can go from one place to the next. So I've been in this area now for more than 40 years. At the moment, I'm 85 years old. I don't look it.
Not at all. Not at all.
And I hope to be quite a number of years still.
Father Apollis.
Yes.
Quick question. Since you've been living here for all these years, what is the major economic activity that takes place around you? Where do people work? What are their jobs? And has it changed from, like, say, from when you started living here to when you're living here now, or is the pattern still the same?
Well, actually, the first employers were the people who built the canal system. And they gave employment to quite a number of people. And those were the first non-whites who came to stay here, working on the canal system from Bulser Dam right through until it reaches the sea. And then the next was the railway. The first train stopped at Klaver. And there was always repairs to be done, and things had to work right. Now the funniest thing is this: you stayed in Klaver and you worked for the South African Railways. You get on the train on a Sunday and you must report at Belleville on Monday morning. The train gets you there in time. Then they put you on a lorry and they bring you from Cape Town back to Klaver to come and work here. The thing is this, you don't actually sign on for the week's work here at Klaver. You had to go to Belleville. That's where the offices were. So you take the train on a Sunday evening, get to Cape Town around about 6 o'clock in the morning. You get to Belleville, you sign in, and they put you on a lorry and they bring you back. Then the next big employer was when they tarred the N7. And you had a lot of people working on the National Road. The funniest part of it was this, that at that time they had a high school here at Klaver, but a high school only for the whites. And then when as the N7 moved further and further north, the whites who worked here, they went with the camp as it moved, and we brought down their number. So the high school here closed up and became a primary school again. We, on the other hand, as the blacks, we had to go to the nearest high school, which was at Calvinia, where I also taught. You had to go to the nearest high school in order to get a bursary. People could not afford to get their children to go and study at some other place. If you go to the nearest high school, then it was Malmesbury, then you had to pay boarding. Whereas if you go to Calvinia, you get a bursary, the children could get a free education. So quite a number of the young people went there. It was first a secondary school. We had a curriculum up to grade 10, standard 8, because most of them went and after qualifying they went to Cape Town. Most of them went to Zonnebloem, qualify as teachers. But later on it became high school, going up to grade 12 or standard 10, and then it opened them up to go to either Hewitt or go to Oudtshoorn to qualify there as teachers. But that was the only place you could send your children to in order to get a bursary to stay there and getting a free education.
Oh, and now lastly, Father Apollis, regarding like the different races that live in Klaver, how does that dynamic work? Because I've tried to tease out this question from a number of people I've spoken to this week already. And not one person, I've never gotten the same view twice. I always get like a cross answer. What is it actually? Do people mix? Are people getting over it? Or is it like still being held in place by like the past realities and economic situations?
In the past, it was actually an apartheid system. It was fairly strict in this area. I know once I was very friendly with the postmaster. He was a white chap, and the post office had 2 doors. Unfortunately, I went to the wrong door, and the clerk standing behind the counter, he didn't want to serve me. And I asked what I wanted to buy some stamps, and I insisted on getting the stamps because I was there, my money is good enough. And with a row, the postmaster came out from where he was sitting and he asked what the trouble was. So the clerk told him that he came through the wrong door. So he said, but that is not a problem. There was no division marking off whites one side and non-whites on the other side. It was only a matter of coming through a door. And then he gave me my stamps and I paid him the amount of money I had. And I mean, he actually was, I would say, a better person than the one who was employed, who insisted that I leave the place, come to the right door, that he'll be prepared to serve me, otherwise he won't. But that was not actually the way it was some of the whites were acceptable, and we were on a good standing. But in some of the places it was not so good. I knew once, myself and a friend of mine, he was from Louisfontein, and we were actually the main people in the church. And we had a meeting with the rector who stayed in Canada. So we went to a place called Newsville. There we had the meeting.
Mm-hmm.
And it was on a farm. And we went into the farmhouse, we were sitting in the sitting room, had the meeting, and after the meeting the farmer came and he said, you know, you two are the first colored people sitting in my sitting room. Nobody has ever, of black people, has ever entered my sitting room. And it had a remarkable effect on us. And later on, we found that he left the church because he was married to a woman belonging to the NG Church, and she did not accept the thing that we were in the house and we were sitting actually in the place where nobody else was allowed to go. And I think it had quite an effect on her, but not on him and neither on us, because we went to do our business and it was concluded we went home. So that was actually had an effect on most of us. But the other thing was this, that you know, at that time there were many ways in which most probably the government was trying to ease the tension between the different races. We had what was known as a verhoudingskomitee, on which whites and blacks used to serve, and where we tried to ease the tension between the different communities. But in many cases it didn't work, because there was still the feeling that you were not equal to us. And we are only doing this because the government on the day wanted it that way. We had to comply, and it must be done. So we got together, discussed trivial things, and that did not bring about any changes within the community.
So has it changed now from back then to now, or is it more or less the same pattern?
Well, we find that the change isn't noticeable. I know that you have what is known as a policing forum. And I know that once we came together at the policing forum, and we started to get this thing organized. And we got the business people interested, and we got the doctors interested. They came to the meeting, and one of the people who were there, one of the black persons, he made some remarks which was not fitting. And he actually wanted to know what the whites were doing there. I mean, it was actually the wrong way of addressing any situation. If people were interested in joining up, reaching out, you must encourage them. And he was, I mean, being too severe in trying to ask these people what they are actually doing there, instead of encouraging them because they are there and trying to cement what has been broken down all these years, and trying to get a community that will work together instead of opening up a rift. And I think that has not been healed yet.
There's still the division between
They
black and
still
white.
feel there's division. We also find it amongst the priests, or the different denominations. There are some of them that would mix, and some of them that won't.
Okay. Lastly, Father Apollis, as a community-based faith leader, would you say that the life of the average citizen of Klaver is better than it was pre-94, the worse, or is it still the same?
I would actually say that it is a little better. Because seeing that you are free to stay where you are, where you want to be. You are not restricted to any special area. If you have the means, you can. But you still find that some people still don't accept the idea that you are as good as they are. And in some cases even maybe better. There still is a feeling that there should be superiority among those calling themselves white over those who call themselves black. And but there is a matter of improvement. People are now trying to find that it is a means for people to live together and have a better community. But you still find that in the religious community there is still a rift. You don't find white people attending an Anglican church. You still have an English church that's divided. You still have a apostolic church that's divided. They would rather call themselves Pinkster Protestant than Apostolic Faith Mission. So Pinkster Protestant is exclusively white, where Anglican faith, Apostolic faith, is principally black. You still have that. I know in the Anglican church here in Klaver, sometimes you find that we once had one of the doctors, he was an Anglican, and he used to attend church. And then he left the country, he went to practice in Canada. But apart from that, you don't have any whites. We had a white church in Vredendal. And when the blacks started moving in, stayed there, worked there, the whites slowly moved out. So that you find in most of the religious communities, you either find that they are all black or they are all white. You don't find Christians are supposed to be Christians. They are not white, neither are they black.